I answered a Craigslist ad for a roommate. I'm not sure the guy is human. It began the way all terrible ideas do. At 3:04 a.m. with a buzzed brain, the bitter aftertaste of whiskey on my tongue, and the backlight of my phone screen burning into my retinas like a judgmental god. I was slouched on a second-hand futon, which creaked every time I shifted my weight, in an apartment that technically wasn't mine anymore. My name had just been taken off the lease, and most of my stuff, what little of it wasn't emotionally or financially devastated in the breakup, was crammed into the trunk of my beat-up Camry parked 3 floors down. The air still smelled like her. Vanilla and something sharp, maybe eucalyptus, and it cut through me harder than the booze. I hated that. Hated that I noticed. Hated that I cared. But that's what happens when you lose something you thought you had forever. Clarity comes dressed like grief. I needed to move on. I needed a place. And Craigslist, in all its digital, desperate glory, seemed like the last lifeline. My thumb flicked through ads the way you might swipe on a dating app, though this felt grimmer, like speed dating for people one eviction away from squatting. Moldy basements, couch spaces in already cramped studios. A guy offering free rent in exchange for light cosplay roleplay. I didn't click, but I saved it because curiosity. And then I saw it, sandwiched between a live-in dog nanny listing and someone selling a taxidermied raccoon wearing a tutu. Roommate wanted. $300 per month. Utilities included. Must like quiet. No questions. That was it. No photo. No name. Just that. I blinked. Reread it. Posted 7 minutes ago. $300? That's not a red flag, that's a Soviet parade down Main Street. Who the hell rents in the city for $300 a month, utilities included? But it wasn't the worst deal I'd seen. And the phrasing, must like quiet, struck something strange in me. Not eerie exactly, just odd. Like when you read a sentence and can't tell if it's threatening or just bad grammar. The location pinged near the historic district, the part of town where buildings sagged like they were tired of pretending to be anything but old. The streets were narrow, always half-shaded by aging trees, and the lamps flickered at random like they were remembering something traumatic. It wasn't bad exactly, just off. Still, I was 2 shots deep, emotionally bankrupt, and out of options. So I emailed, "Hey, I'm interested in the room. Is it still available?" 30 seconds later, my phone pinged. New message. No greeting. No name. "It's available. You can come by now if you want." Now, I stared at the glowing screen. The timestamp was exactly 3:07 a.m. My fingers hovered over the keys. Logic, battered and beaten though it was, tried to speak up in the back of my skull. "Normal people don't schedule apartment viewings at 3 a.m., it whispered. But logic didn't pay the rent. Or rather, my lack of logic had already lost me the last one. I typed back, "Sure, send me the address." Another reply came instantly, like they'd been waiting. 721 Ashmere Street. Side entrance. Don't knock. Just come in. I froze. No knocking? Just come in? What the hell kind of horror movie clause was that? I should have stopped. Should have deleted the email. Laughed it off as one more Craigslist cryptid. But I didn't. I grabbed my keys, slid on my hoodie, and left the old apartment one last time. Ashmere Street looked exactly like I remembered it. Like it had been dipped in sepia and left to dry in a forgotten drawer. Street numbers were carved into wooden beams or painted in shaky white strokes that peeled like old scabs. Most of the porches had rocking chairs no one rocked in. The silence was thicker here, more intentional. Not just the absence of sound, but the presence of quiet. 721 Ashmere was nestled between 2 taller houses, both dark and empty-looking. It was a narrow, 3-story building with paint that used to be green or blue. Now it was just old. The side entrance was half hidden behind a rusting gate and a lattice overgrown with dead ivy. I stood there for a moment, phone in hand, rereading the email. "Don't knock. Just come in." The handle was old brass, cool to the touch. I turned it, unlocked. The door swung open silently, like it had been waiting. Inside was unexpected. No flickering light bulbs, no creaky stairs or the scent of mildew. Just stillness. The air was dry but clean, with a faint scent of cedar and something else. Lavender? Maybe. It didn't feel like a murder scene. Yet, the hallway was narrow and led directly into a living room. And it was nice. Not just clean but curated. Sparse furniture, all minimalist and mid-century. A single couch in gray, a low oak coffee table, one potted plant that was somehow alive. No dust, no clutter, just quiet. Then, from somewhere deeper in the apartment, "You're early," I spun. A figure stood at the edge of the hallway, half shrouded in shadow. He wasn't tall, maybe 5 feet 8 inches, thin, pale. He wore a dark sweater and slacks like he'd stepped out of a European film. Black hair, short, no expression. "You said to come now," I managed, instantly regretting how defensive it sounded. "I meant it," he said, stepping forward into the light. His eyes were strange. Not threatening, but intense. Like he was always listening for something you couldn't hear. "I'm Elias," he said. "The room's upstairs." That was it. No handshake. No questions. He turned and started walking. I followed. The room was on the 3rd floor at the very end of a narrow hallway. The carpet muffled our steps like it was made to swallow sound. Elias stopped outside the door and turned. "You can take it if you want. Month to month. No lease. Cash only. Quiet is important. You keep to yourself, I keep to myself." I looked past him. The room was simple, a twin bed, desk, small dresser. A window facing the back alley. No personal touches. No dust either. "Why so cheap?" I asked, unable to help myself. Elias tilted his head like he hadn't considered the question relevant. "I don't need the money. I just don't like empty rooms." We stood there in the silence a few beats too long. Eventually, I nodded. "Okay, I'll take it." He handed me a key. Not a single document signed. "I'll expect rent on the 1st. You can move in now if you have your things." That was how it started. At 3:17 a.m. on a forgotten street, in a house that didn't feel empty but didn't feel quite full either. I hauled my stuff in that night. No questions asked. Just like the ad said. I should have noticed more then. The way no doors creaked. The way the air didn't move unless you opened a window. The fact that there were no clocks in the house. Not even one. But I was tired. Heartbroken. Desperate. And the room didn't ask anything of me. Not yet. The guy's name was Theo. I didn't know that at first, not until he handed me the key with a nod and said, almost as an afterthought, "Don't lose it. That one's cut special." Then he turned and walked away down the narrow hall, his footsteps whisper-soft on the thick carpet like the house swallowed noise on purpose. Theo wasn't much for words, I could tell that immediately. He had a kind of presence that wasn't shy, but still like a lake before a storm. He wasn't Elias. Different guy. Elias had been the email name, but Theo was the one waiting when I arrived. Maybe they were the same. Maybe Elias was a middle name or a lie. I didn't ask. Not after the look he gave me when I tried. The apartment was pristine, but not in a cozy, Pinterest board kind of way. It was like walking into a model unit right before a showing. Surfaces gleamed. Corners were sharp. No fingerprints on the fridge. No streaks on the windows. Even the couch had the kind of hospital folded throw blanket that screamed, "Don't touch me." It should have felt empty, but it didn't. There was something else. Something subtle. Not a smell, not a sound, just a feeling. Like the space around me had eyes. Like I was already being watched even before I made it to the room. But the drawings, that's what really got me. Every wall, every room, even the inside of the linen closet covered in swirling, hand-drawn shapes in deep charcoal, spirals upon spirals, jagged stars, interlocking geometric patterns that hurt to look at too long. Eyes. Lots of them. Not cartoon eyes, but jagged, primitive ones like something scraped from a cave wall 1,000 years ago. At first, I thought it was some kind of aesthetic thing. A weird art phase. Or maybe Theo was just eccentric. But when I asked, when I finally worked up the nerve to gesture at a symbol just above the doorway and say, "So, you draw all these?" He paused. Didn't turn around. Didn't smile. Just said, calm as anything. "They keep it out." I blinked. "Keep what out?" He looked at me finally. Not angry. Not even annoyed. Just measuring. Then flatly, "You'll see." And that was it. Conversation over. I slept with the door locked that night. Not because of Theo. He hadn't done anything threatening. He hadn't done much of anything at all. It was just the house. The silence in it wasn't normal. It didn't feel peaceful, it felt pressurized. Like there was a weight to it. Like something was holding its breath. At one point around 3:40 a.m. I woke up sweating. Not from heat. From something else. A dream I couldn't remember, but that left my chest tight and my skin cold. I thought I heard whispering from the hallway, too faint to make out, too rhythmic to be the pipes. When I opened the door, there was nothing there. Just a stretch of dim hallway and the drawing of a spiral etched right above my threshold. I went back to bed. I didn't sleep. The next morning, Theo was in the kitchen. He was making coffee black, no cream, no sugar. There was only one mug. "Do you work or?" I asked, trying for small talk. "I'm usually here," he said without looking at me. "What do you do?" He turned then, calmly, and said, "I listen." I wanted to laugh. I didn't. Over the next few days, I started to notice the rules. He never played music. Never used the TV even though there was one. He never cooked after sunset. Never turned on the hallway lights past midnight. He never spoke above a whisper after dark. And those drawings? He updated them. Every morning. Like clockwork. Always at sunrise. He'd walk the halls in bare feet, retracing the charcoal lines in absolute silence. Sometimes muttering something under his breath, but never loud enough for me to hear. One time, I peeked around the corner and watched him for a full 10 minutes. His hand moved with precision, like he was copying something from memory. Or obeying. The longer I stayed, the more I felt it. That pressure. Like the air had mass. Like the apartment itself was holding something in or something out. Once, I tried erasing one of the symbols in the closet. Just a little one. A curling line that looked like an eye folded in on itself. Within seconds, Theo was there. He didn't yell. Didn't accuse. Just stared at the wall, then at me, then said calmly, "Never do that again." Then he redrew it slower than usual and stood in the doorway until I left the room. And that's when the sounds started. They were faint at first, like shifting wood or wind outside the walls. But then I started hearing something else. Something scratching. Something breathing. Not inside the apartment. Not exactly. It came from the walls. From beneath the floorboards. From just beyond the spiral-covered door frames. And once, only once, I swear to God, I saw a shadow cross the window in the hallway even though we were on the 3rd floor and there was no fire escape. I told myself I was imagining it. That it was just an old building. That Theo was just odd. But one night, I heard him whispering. He was standing in the living room, both hands pressed flat to the wall, eyes closed. His lips moved fast, like he was trying to say 100 words in 10 seconds. The symbols near his fingers pulsed. Not like a trick of the light. Not like a hallucination. They moved. And then he said something I'll never forget. "It's thinning." He didn't know I was there. He didn't know I heard. Theo told me this the first night. Not during a conversation, not casually. He said it like a surgeon issuing post-op instructions. Direct, clinical. Like breaking that rule wasn't just impolite, it was dangerous. No noise. None. Not a footstep. Not a breath louder than necessary, he said. Especially not your voice. I waited for a punchline. A grin. Some sign that he was messing with me. He didn't blink. When I asked why, all he said was, "You'll see." I set an alarm for 11:50 p.m. that night. Don't ask me why, I think part of me wanted to test him. Wanted to peek behind the curtain. Or maybe I just didn't believe anything bad would happen in an apartment that smelled faintly of sage and wood polish. I sat in bed in the dark, phone in hand, watching the clock tick over. 12 o'clock. Nothing. 12:03. Still nothing. I exhaled through my nose, a little smug. But then, 12:07 a.m. It started as a rustling. Like paper being crumpled under a heavy book. Or maybe dry leaves shifting in the wind, except we were 3 stories up and the windows were shut. Then, a whisper. Not whispers. Not the generic kind you chalk up to your own brain short-circuiting in the dark. This was a voice. One voice. Low. Rhythmic. Male, maybe? Or not. It spoke in a language that didn't have soft edges. Every syllable sounded like it had been scratched into something. Like the words were made of broken glass dragged across stone. And it was close. Too close. I froze. The whispering wasn't coming from the hallway. Not from outside. It was coming from inside the walls. Right behind the headboard. Like someone had their mouth pressed to the drywall and was murmuring straight into my ear through 6 inches of wood and plaster. I bolted upright. There was no one in the room. I reached for the lamp, thought better of it. My hand hovered above my phone, but I didn't dial. Who would I even call? I got up, padded barefoot to the door, and checked the lock. Still latched. But the whispering, it didn't stop. It never stopped. It just moved. Slid from one wall to another, circling the room like it was trying to find a crack. A weak spot. And all the while, it kept speaking. Over and over. A litany of wet, choked syllables that made my skin crawl and my stomach clench. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just lay there in the dark, jaw clenched, body rigid, eyes on the ceiling. Eventually, it faded. Not all at once. The way a fog recedes. Reluctantly. The clock said 12:36 a.m. when it finally stopped. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I found Theo in the kitchen exactly where I expected he'd be. He was stirring black coffee like he'd been doing it for hours, his expression unreadable as always. "You heard it," he said. It wasn't a question. I didn't answer right away. I just sat down across from him at the tiny kitchen table, waiting for him to say more. He didn't. So I asked, "Do you hear it every night?" He gave me the smallest nod. "And it's in the walls?" Theo shrugged. "Sort of." I frowned. "What does that mean?" He sipped his coffee, stared into the mug for a long moment, then said, "Depends on what it wants." The silence stretched between us like a wire pulled too tight. I swallowed. "Did you ever talk to it?" That's when he looked at me. Really looked at me. His eyes were the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. The kind of tired that comes from carrying something too long and knowing no one can help you lift it. "I did," he said softly. "First week I moved in." He paused, rubbed at the scar on his wrist I hadn't noticed before. "I didn't mean to. It was instinct. You hear someone whisper, you whisper back. It said my name. That's what got me. I thought it was a trick. Or someone messing around." "What happened?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he said, "First time I spoke back, it answered. The spirals were changing. I didn't imagine it. I know I didn't. There was one in the hallway right outside my room that had always looked like a loose swirl. Rough, like someone had sketched it half asleep or in a rush. I passed it every day, sometimes twice when I couldn't sleep, and wandered the dark apartment like a ghost. But this morning? It was different. It was tighter. Precise. No longer a swirl, but a vortex. One that seemed to spin inward even though it was perfectly still. It was deeper. Darker. The lines weren't just black, they were charred. Like the charcoal had been pressed in hard enough to scar the wall itself. And the pattern felt like it was staring back at me. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough that I forgot I was holding my coffee. It went cold in my hand. Then stupidly, I touched it. Just a light brush. Just the tip of my index finger dragged along the edge of the spiral like I was tracing the path inward. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted proof it was real. Maybe I just wanted to feel something other than dread for a second. That was a mistake. It felt warm. Not like a surface warmed by the sun, no, this was something else. This was alive. It pulsed just once like a faint heartbeat beneath the paint. My skin started burning almost immediately. Not sharp pain at first. More like a slow heat crawling under the flesh, growing, tightening until my entire finger was screaming in silence. I gasped and yanked my hand back like I'd touched a live wire. The pain lingered for an hour. No amount of cold water or ice helped. When I looked at it in the bathroom mirror, the tip of my finger was turning gray. Not bruised. Not blistered. Gray. As if the color had been drained from it. As if it had touched something that wasn't meant for this world. I didn't tell Theo right away. I don't know why. Maybe because deep down I was afraid he'd be angry. Not scared. Not surprised. Angry. Like I'd broken something I didn't understand. But that night, I found him standing at the end of the hallway staring at the same spiral I'd touched. Not moving. Not breathing from what I could tell. Just staring. I stood there for a while waiting for him to speak. He didn't. So I did. "It changed," I said quietly. Theo didn't nod. Didn't look away. Instead, he whispered, "They're growing." He turned then, as sharper than I'd ever seen them. "Which one did you touch?" I didn't answer right away. He took a step forward, and for the first time since I moved in, I felt fear, not of the apartment, not of the symbols, but of him. He saw my hand before I could hide it. Theo's jaw clenched. "Jesus. What is it?" I asked, trying not to sound as scared as I felt. He didn't answer. Instead, he said, "You need to start tracing." "What?" "The symbols. Every morning. Before sunrise. If it's marked you, it'll come through you next. The only thing holding it back is the lines. The spirals." He nodded once. "They're not drawings. They're seals." I looked down at my hand. The gray was spreading. Not fast, but steadily. Like something was seeping in through the pores, curling its way up my veins. "What happens if it reaches my arm?" I asked. Theo's face darkened. Then we cut it off. I woke up at 2:46 a.m. with Theo standing over me. Not knocking. Not calling my name. Just there, motionless in the dark, his silhouette barely lit by the hallway light spilling in through the cracked door. His face was pale. Eyes wide. Fixed on something beyond me, or maybe through me. My heart jackhammered against my ribs as I sucked in a breath sharp enough to cut. Before I could say a word, he whispered, "Don't leave your room tonight." His voice was the thinnest thread of sound. Fragile. Like he was afraid even the air would hear. I swallowed. Why? He didn't blink. Didn't move. "It's thinning," he said. Then he was gone. I didn't sleep after that. I didn't even try. I just sat up in bed with my back to the wall, a kitchen knife clutched tight in my lap. I don't remember grabbing it. Maybe I did it in a daze before I went to bed. Or maybe it was already beside me. I wish I could say I was calm, that I was ready. But my hands were slick with sweat and every creak of the walls made me flinch like I'd touched a live wire. The apartment felt wrong. Like gravity had shifted a few degrees. Like something just beneath the surface was about to crack through. The clock on my phone read 3:33 a.m. when the lights flickered. Then died. A deep, swallowing darkness flooded the room, thick as ink. The kind of dark that makes you feel like your eyes are still closed even when they're wide open. And that's when I heard it. Not footsteps. Dragging. A wet, slithering drag. Like something slick and massive pulling itself across the hardwood floor just beyond my door. Slow. Deliberate. Scrape, drag. Scrape, drag. It was moving straight toward me. I held my breath. My entire body locked in place. The knife trembled in my grip, but I didn't dare move. The sound stopped. Right at my door. And then, breathing. Not the kind a person makes. Not even animal. This was something else. Heavy. Labored. Like lungs that were too large for the body they were shoved into. Each breath sounded wet, ragged, like it was inhaling through waterlogged cloth. It just stood there, on the other side of the door. Breathing. I could feel it. Not in sound. In pressure. Like it was leaning against the wood. Testing the boundary. Waiting for something to invite it in. I don't know how long it stayed. Could have been 5 minutes. Could have been 50. Eventually, the breathing stopped. There was a long silence. Then, drag, scrape, fading into the distance. I didn't open the door. Not until daylight. Even then, my hand shook as I turned the knob. The hallway was empty. Silent. But the floor just outside my door was stained. Long, dark smears stretched across the wood, 4 of them evenly spaced. Like the path left behind by something that had melted its way across the surface. They shimmered faintly in the light like oil on water. Whatever it was, it had weight. Mass. Theo was already awake. Standing in the kitchen like nothing had happened, calmly stirring his coffee with a spoon that clinked like a heartbeat. He glanced down the hall, saw the marks, then looked at me. No surprise. No panic. Just a quiet nod. "It's curious about you," he said. He sipped his coffee and walked away. I found a journal in Theo's room. And yeah, I know how that sounds. I know I shouldn't have. I told myself the same thing as I was doing it. But after 12 nights of whispering walls, drawings that shifted when you weren't looking, and Theo dodging every question like I was the insane one, curiosity one. Or maybe it wasn't curiosity. Maybe it was invitation. He wasn't home. Said he needed to walk the perimeter, whatever that meant, and left just after sundown. The moment the door clicked shut, I felt something pull me down the hall toward the room he always kept closed. I'd never been in it. Never even seen inside. Theo was the kind of roommate who valued boundaries like they were religion. But the lock was old. Weak. It clicked open with the tip of a butter knife and guilt. The room was not what I expected. No bed. No dresser. No clothes. Just a desk. A chair. And the spirals. Drawn on every inch of the walls in layer upon layer of black, gray, red. Chalk. Charcoal. Something darker. Some of them so fresh they left residue on my fingertips when I touched them. And in the center of the desk, lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, sat the journal. Leather-bound, worn at the corners. Its edges curled like something had been chewing on it. I opened it. At first, it read like a field guide. Date-stamped entries, neat handwriting. Observations. Patterns. Theories. It never crosses the salt lines. But it tests them. Nightmares occur most often at 3:33. Lucid dreams fail. It knows when you're aware. There were diagrams, spatial renderings of the apartment. Arrows. Circles. Notes on energy flux and thin zones. Pages and pages of frantically written details about the spirals, each symbol assigned some obscure sigil or ward function. Then came the sketches. Dozens of them. Smudged, shaky drawings of a figure. Always tall. Always looming. It never looked the same twice. Sometimes it had 4 limbs, sometimes 6. Sometimes more. Its outline seemed to blur at the edges, like Theo hadn't drawn it so much as tried to remember it through static. But the mouth was always the same. Vertical, running straight down the center of its head like a tear in the world. Sometimes open, sometimes stitched shut, always wrong. And under one particularly dark sketch, Theo had written, "It came through in dreams, first as a voice, then as a shape." Another page simply read, "It doesn't live here, but it feeds here." The final pages were different, unhinged. The handwriting became unstable, erratic. The neat script devolved into jagged strokes and half-formed words, like he was trying to write faster than his hand could follow, or like he was no longer entirely human when he wrote them. Some entries were crossed out violently. Others had been soaked through with what I hope was water. The last intact page was filled with one sentence, repeated over and over again, scribbled so hard the words had gouged the paper. "Don't look at its face. Don't look. Don't look. Don't." I turned the page and stopped breathing. It wasn't blank. It was a mirror, or something like one. The surface shimmered faintly in the low light, like glass submerged in black ink. I stared at it, heart pounding, unsure if it was just a strange piece of paper or something far, far worse. Then the surface rippled, and I saw something move, not on the page, behind it. I slammed the book shut and nearly dropped it. My finger came away wet and stained red. When Theo got back, I was still sitting on his floor, the journal in my lap, hands shaking. He didn't yell. He didn't even look surprised. He just sighed, deeply, like something inevitable had finally happened. "You shouldn't have read it," he said. "I needed to know." Theo nodded, slowly. "Now it knows you know." He knelt and opened the book to the final page, careful not to touch the rippling surface. "You looked." I hesitated. Only for a second. He stared at me. "You're lucky," he said. "Sometimes a second is all it needs." I made a mistake. A real one this time. I looked. It was 3:17 a.m. I remember because I'd glanced at the microwave on my way out of the bedroom. I wasn't trying to break any rules. I just needed a glass of water. My mouth felt like sandpaper, and Theo wasn't home. Or at least I didn't think he was. The air felt thick, like the walls were holding their breath. I should have felt something. A warning, a whisper, a pull behind the eyes. But I didn't. I stepped into the hallway, just for a second. The quiet was wrong. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the presence of something else. Something that hummed beneath the silence, like a subsonic vibration you can't hear but feel in your teeth. My footsteps didn't echo. They didn't even make sound at all. That's when I knew. Something was here. I froze halfway between my door and the kitchen. Every hair on my body stood on end. My skin felt tight. I turned my head, slowly, and looked down the hallway. And there it was. Just a flicker. Just for a moment. Movement at the far end. The lights hadn't gone out, but they had dimmed, subtly, like the hallway was sinking underwater. Shadows stretched too far. Corners curved where they shouldn't. And in the dim, something stood. At first, my brain tried to write it off as Theo. Tall, thin, still. But the longer I looked, the more I realized. It wasn't Theo. It wasn't anyone. It was wearing a man. A skin it didn't quite understand. Its body stretched upward in long, unnatural proportions. Joints bent where there shouldn't have been joints. His arms hung too low. His fingers didn't taper, they just kept going. Like wet ropes twitching with breath. And the face. God, the face. It was almost right. Almost human. Like someone had sculpted it from memory in a rush, but got the details wrong. The eyes were too wide apart. The nose too long. The smile too exact. It wasn't smiling with its mouth. It was smiling with its whole face. As if every muscle had been trained into a grin it didn't understand. A grotesque imitation of joy, stretched too far, held too long. Like it thought that's what people do when they meet in the dark. And it was looking right at me. I blinked, and the lights shuddered. Not off, just glitched. A stutter in the air, like reality coughed. And then, nothing. I came to lying on the floor of my room. Door closed, lights off, knife in my hand. No memory of walking back. No sense of time passed. Just the taste of metal in my mouth and the unmistakable feeling of having been seen. I lay there for what felt like hours, heart pounding so loud I could hear the walls vibrate. Eventually, I got up. Outside my door, the air still smelled wrong, burnt ozone and rot. The hallway was empty, but the wall across from my door now had a new spiral, drawn in something dark, still wet. And this one was different. It wasn't defensive like the others. It wasn't a seal. It was a target, a mark, and it was drawn at eye level. I just woke up. 4:06 a.m. the glowing numbers on my nightstand said, but I already knew it was early. I could feel the hour in my bones, in that specific kind of dread that only comes when the world outside your window is dead quiet, like the earth has stopped spinning and no one remembered to tell you. I didn't know what woke me. Not a sound. Not a dream. Just urgency. Like something inside me had snapped awake before the rest could catch up. I sat up slowly. That's when I saw it. There was a new spiral on my door. Not drawn with charcoal this time. Not scrawled in Theo's practiced, symmetrical lines. This one was uneven. Raw. Wrong. Like it had been carved with something blunt or grown from beneath the surface of the wood. It pulsed. I swear to God, it pulsed just once. A ripple in the shape, like breath moving through skin. I didn't go near it. Not right away. Because I could feel it. It was open. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a wound. The air around it bent inward subtly. The edges of the door rippled at the corners like heat waves off asphalt. And behind the spiral, on the other side of the thin slab of painted pine, I heard something. Not breathing this time. Whispering. Like before, but closer. More deliberate. The voice pressed against the inside of the door, soft and hungry. It wasn't speaking English. It wasn't speaking language. It was like a mouthful of wet leaves and bone dust, trying to remember what vowels felt like. I should have called for Theo. I should have screamed. But all I could do was listen. Because this time, the whispering wasn't just sound. It was understanding. It wasn't saying words I knew, but it was speaking to me. Directly. Into my thoughts. Into whatever part of your mind goes silent just before you fall asleep or die. And it kept repeating one idea. You saw it. You saw. Now you were seen. I backed up until I hit the wall. Something cracked faintly on the other side of the door. Not a knock. Not a scratch. Something stepped. It didn't sound like footsteps. It sounded like pressure. Like the weight of something that wasn't meant to move through this world pressing its shape into ours. Wood groaned. The floor creaked. The door swelled slightly in its frame. And then I saw the handle turn. Slowly. Deliberately. But it didn't open. It just twitched. A single, sharp jolt as if testing the idea of entry. Like whatever was out there wasn't just waiting, it was learning. The whispering stopped. The spiral stopped pulsing. And just like that, the door was still again. But the mark remained. Red-black. Twisting inward like it wanted to pull light into itself. I haven't moved since. I haven't blinked. Theo isn't back. Or maybe he is, and he's standing right outside the door. Waiting. Smiling. Should I open it? No. No, of course not. But something deep in my gut keeps asking the same question over and over. What if it already did?